I used to waste days of my life trapped in a loop of infinite scrolling until I read the book Dose by the neuroscientist TJ Power, which cured my procrastination literally overnight. So in this video, I'm going to break down the exact strategies I learned from this book that cured my doom scrolling addiction, and I'll share the actionable tactics I used to give me the consistent motivation to achieve my biggest goals, like getting in the best shape of my life and growing this YouTube channel. But the harsh truth is, none of these strategies will actually help you stop procrastinating, unless you avoid the one mistake that keeps most people trapped in a loop of infinite scrolling forever. So to show you how to avoid it and instantly unlock motivation on command, there's something crucial that you have to understand first. So imagine that this tennis ball is your motivation, and every time you go for a quick scroll on your phone, you're throwing this tennis ball into the air. The longer you scroll, the higher the tennis ball goes and the more motivation you feel. But there's a huge problem here, because as a great man once said, what goes up must come down. And that's because every time you scroll, your brain releases a huge spike of this thing called dopamine that boosts your positive emotions in the short term. But what most people don't know is that dopamine can quickly crash after doing certain activities like scrolling through your phone. And this creates what psychologist Dr. Anna Lemke calls a pleasure-pain imbalance. And you might have experienced this same pleasure-pain imbalance in your own life if you've ever felt demotivated, distracted, or even a little depressed immediately after a scrolling session. This completely consumed me in my first semester at university, and I can never understand why I was stuck in this loop, whilst people around me were somehow managing to eat well, exercise, and work hard. But it turns out they weren't throwing their ball high into the air at all. In fact, they were playing a different game entirely, because they'd figured out how to train their brain to find motivation through small, manageable dopamine hits that didn't come with the painful crashes. Instead of throwing their dopamine ball high up into the air and suffering from painful hits, they kept their dopamine gently bouncing up and down through simple, repeatable daily habits. But here's the exciting thing. These habits aren't actually hard to implement for yourself. You just have to know what they are and how to easily start using them from today. So that's exactly why I'm going to show you what these tactics are so you can steal them for yourself and break your own loop of procrastination. And the first tactic works like this. So a few weeks ago, I noticed something pretty alarming, and I'm going to bet that you must have noticed this same thing in your own life too. But I only noticed this weird trend when I went to the cinema to watch the Minecraft movie. I know, I'm a 22-year-old child. Anyways, halfway through the movie, I glanced up and noticed that everyone was reaching for their phone halfway through the movie. That was already really entertaining. But when I came home, I quickly checked online to see if my suspicions were true. And it turns out that the internet is flooded with people confessing that they can't even stay focused for long enough to enjoy things that they used to love, like watching a movie. And it turns out that these days, most of us need dopamine from multiple places and multiple hits at once just to be able to focus on anything. So I realized there must be a way to avoid this and reclaim your focus. Because the scary thing is, if this new trend continues, it's going to be impossible to focus on anything meaningful in our lives. However, the good news is, it turns out there's one tactic that completely cures your lack of focus. And I know it works because it's the exact same strategy I use to write this script for the video you're reading. But the wild thing is, if I've done a good enough job with the script, you might even be experiencing using the same tactic right now, if you're fully absorbed in the video, listening to every word I say. And this first tactic is called working in a flow state. And if you know how to unlock your flow state, you'll find it easy to lock into hyper-focus on demand, and you'll be able to power through anything important in your life, whether that's a project, an essay, or a creative task. But here's the problem. Because of the constant dopamine distractions around us, naturally entering a flow state has become nearly impossible. It is not your fault. However, there's 4 steps I learned in Dose that enable me to enter flow state on demand, avoid doom scrolling, and I can power through every task that feels rewarding, satisfying, and motivating. And the steps work like this. Step 1 is to pick exactly one task you want to focus on. And make sure to select something challenging but achievable, like a section of writing, organizing one room in your house, or completing an overdue work project. Now, step 2 is to create accountability to this task by telling somebody what you're going to focus on. Now, I usually message my editor and friend Robbie to tell him that I'm going to get the script done in the next hour or so. But telling a coworker, a friend, or even leaving a comment on this video saying what you're going to commit to will spark your dopamine and motivate you towards committing to taking action. And step 3 is to eliminate any distraction around you. Now, an easy hack I use is as simple as putting my phone in another room and turning my laptop onto Do Not Disturb. But a criminally underrated hack I learned from Charlie Morgan that'll put your productivity above 99% of other people in the world is to do all of your work from just one tab on your computer. It's a weird hack, but try it and it will change your life. And finally, step 4 is going to make it ridiculously easy to get over the hardest part of getting into a flow state, actually starting to do the work. And the way it worked is I always put a stopwatch clearly visible in front of me. Since it takes around 15 minutes to naturally lock into your flow state, seeing your progress stack up on a timer makes continuing the task feel like a game, and this makes it ridiculously easy to keep going. But here's the catch. In order for flow state to actually work for you, you need to reach a baseline level of motivation to begin with. However, this next tactic is something super easy, clear, and practical that I hope you do just that. And since I started to implement it daily from Dose, it's completely destroyed my procrastination before it even starts. And it works like this. Have you ever wondered how people like Navy SEALs, doctors, and Olympians find the motivation to stay disciplined and do incredibly challenging work every single day? It isn't because of their genetics or because they have some natural gift that we don't have. Instead, the reason why the most productive, successful, and fulfilled people avoid procrastination is because they start their day with dopamine-building activities, which allows them to create a motivational state that lasts all day. So tactic number 2 is to cure your procrastination by taking small steps that build discipline. But what are some of these small dopamine building activities that you can apply to your own life? Well, the good news is this could be basically any task, but there's one crucial detail most people miss that destroys their motivation in the first place. The trick here is to identify small tasks that can trick your brain into releasing dopamine quickly, and giving you the motivation to effortlessly work up to those bigger, more challenging, demanding tasks. Now, it might sound almost too simple to work, but ever since I've broken down big tasks like cleaning an entire space into small steps like taking the bins out, making my bed, doing the dishes, I found the motivation to always complete the big task after. And if you want 44 small habits and tactics just like this to trick your brain into boosting dopamine and unlocking motivation on command, check out that top link in the description. But even though you now know how to build motivation with small dopamine boosting habits, there's still something in your life that's going to completely destroy your productivity. So let me show you how this next tactic helped me spend way less time on my phone, but also give me way more energy, motivation, and happiness than I ever experienced before. So, have you ever told yourself that you'll unwind during a short scrolling session? It probably felt great at first, but then the notifications, stories, and negative news reports leave you feeling mentally drained, demotivated, and frustrated. Well, that's exactly what happened with me, until I discovered how to organize my life in a way that actually reduced the amount of time I was spending on my phone. Now, this next tactic is something called phone fasting, but if I can be honest with you for a second, I found this really tough at first, but there are 5 hacks I wish I knew sooner, because these hacks made it insanely easy to implement the tactic of phone fasting and stop wasting time on my phone. And the first one works like this. And the most important thing I do in my daily routine is I use the morning to set the tone for the rest of my day. And the most crucial aspect about this is avoiding going on my phone for the first thing. But there is an easy way to do this, even if you might think this is an impossible task. Now I found it becomes really simple to avoid my phone in the morning when I have a specific action that I'll do in the morning that first sort of occupies my mind. Maybe that's making my bed, brushing my teeth, splashing cold water on my face. So pick just one small thing you can do in the morning that'll give your brain something to do instead of being bored and going on your phone. But if you're anything like me, the biggest issue actually comes up at night and in the evenings when you're already tired from work or school, and 5 minutes of scrolling to unwind quickly turns into hours of your life suddenly vanishing. But here are 4 strategies I use to reclaim my evenings and avoid endlessly scrolling. The strategy 1 is to try exercising in the evenings. Even just a light walk, stretch, or little run gives you something to do that isn't work and doesn't actually have to be on your phone. The next strategy is all to do with meals. I'll always try to organize clearly structured, phone-free meal times with my family or friends. Even just one evening meal a week can make a big difference. And this is also a great opportunity to focus on your relationships. Next up, I'll try to socialize as much as I can without my phone. Doing something active or a group-related activity like a sport or going for coffee is a great opportunity to try connecting in person without phones. And the next strategy I use to avoid wasting my evenings is a little bit weird, but hear me out. Ironically, even watching TV now takes a little bit of effort. I mean, have you ever noticed that it can be really hard to sit through your favorite shows without picking up your phone? So my challenge to you is simple. Try watching one show in full without picking up your phone. If you do this, you'll be amazed at how quickly your focus improves. But the truth is, even if you've mastered putting your phone down for an hour or two to watch TV, none of these tactics I've spoken about are actually going to matter unless you know how to do something that's going to permanently end your procrastination for good. So to show you how it works, let me show you two people that didn't get this tactic right and how it completely ruined their lives. In 2005, Lara and Roger Griffiths won £1.8 million in the lottery. Overnight, their lives changed completely. They began indulging in instant dopamine hits. Extravagant holidays in Dubai, Florida, and France, buying a beauty salon for £150,000, and purchasing a new barn conversion. But just 5 years later, everything changed. And not for the better. Because in 2010, their house caught fire and was severely damaged. But that's not even the worst part. Because Lara and Roger's relationship crumbled under emotional and financial strain, and by 2013, with the divorce finalized, Lara publicly confessed that they were completely broke. But here's the craziest thing. The more you look into it, the more you realize how often lottery winners' stories end in disaster because of them spending money on short-term hits of dopamine. And these short-term hits of dopamine you get from infinite scrolling are exactly the same as the holidays, cars, and houses that the lottery winners experience too. So how do you avoid the same fate as Lara and Roger and ensure that your life isn't completely ruined from these short-term dopamine hits? Well, tactic number 4 is creating a long-term goal so exciting you find it impossible to waste time infinitely scrolling. So watch this video next and I'll show you an easy dopamine boosting tactic that will make it ridiculously easy to find a goal that excites you enough to completely transform your procrastination. And remember that you can get 44 more dopamine boosting tactics by clicking that top link in the description below.